Oh, hello, YouTube. Today in the Naughty Librarian, we are going over episode 7 of Interview with the Vampire, the big finale. And oh my gosh, I am deceased. What? That's how I feel about a lot of things that happened in this episode. I am like not okay. But anyway, let's talk about what actually happened in this episode because oh my gosh, it was a banger. So the episode starts off kind of ominously with discussing about how vampires can be killed. And there's several ways to do it. There's starvation, drinking the blood of the dead, fire, decapitation, the sun, all kind of standard things. However, I'm just going to make a side note for the books because yes, these all are things that kill vampires, but like not always. Like in the books, like no, like people have gotten decapitated and didn't die. And starvation, it takes a long time to starve a vampire because they also hibernate for like decades and they get back up and they're okay. They're hungry, but they're okay. Sometimes, they're not supposed to drink them to their last drop, but like Lestat does it all the time. He's fine. And like the sun, honestly, ancient vampires, the sun doesn't bother them all that much. It just kind of tans them. So like they get like toasted by the sun. It doesn't kill them either. The only thing that like generally kills vampires across the board is fire. Like if you burn something to ashes, it's not coming back. So that's pretty much the only thing that really 100% of the time kills vampires in Anne Rice's world, at least in the books. But anyway, let's go back to like 1939. And the gang's all there. Claudia, Louis, and Lestat. They're all living together in a very unhappy family. Lestat basically has taken control of everything in their lives. He wants to keep them near him at all costs. He doesn't care if they're happy about it. It's what Lestat wants. So, they have stopped being other people and now they're more possessions. So yes, unhealthy living situation. And Claudia and Louis are only really able to conspire against Lestat or talk to each other without Lestat knowing is through telepathy. And one night they have this really like fucked up dinner party where they're eating an encyclopedia salesman but like taking their sweet time with it and making it fancy. But the only cool thing about the scene really is that we finally figure out like how old Lestat is because like his exact ages have never been told, but he was 179 years old at this point and a vampire for 148 of them. So that makes him 31 when he was turned. However, in the book, he's supposed to be 20, so this is an older Lestat. Like, Lestat was a kid when he got turned. He was like 20 years old. So, much younger. And like, Louis was supposed to be about like 25 when he was turned. So, they're in the show they're a bit older than their book counterparts. But this dinner party does kind of speak to the community at large in a way because the neighbors, they're still leaving all these little like things on their doorstep because they think they're evil, so they're leaving like voodoo stuff, Bibles, warding off evil, etc. It's been like 30 years that they have lived in this one place and haven't aged. The neighbors have noticed that there's something off with them. And this all kind of comes to a head this one night when this neighbor comes over. He's just slipping like a letter under their door. And honestly, this scene really like hurt my feelings. It's like kind of a really dark, tragic, fucked up scene. But he is one of their neighbors. He's dying and he's looking for them to help. Like he thinks like, oh, you must be angels and you can help cure my sickness. And he's just a poor, desperate guy, and Lestat has no sympathy or empathy for anybody, so he just kills him. Like I was saying, it kind of underlines the present situation that they're having, that the neighbors are suspicious of them, and it's only really a matter of time before suspicions turn into pitchforks and torches. So like Lestat's like, we got to get the hell out of New Orleans, stat. Like this is gonna go poorly if we stay much longer. But in the meantime, there's also Claudia and Louis' plan to kill Lestat. So we have multiple plans going on all at the same time. This whole episode is kind of like a mystery, like whose plan is coming to fruition first. It's really cool how they play things out. But anyway, step one of Claudia's kill Lestat plan is to lull Lestat into a sense of safety. So Louis, he's gonna have to act like the old times when he was just like completely in love with Lestat, which is going to be difficult for Louis because he's not really that good at acting his feelings. He feels them all the way. So he's gonna have to be in love with Lestat again to get him to let his guard down. Lestat, he's making plans to leave New Orleans and he's trying to figure out where they should go. Just a side note to the scene, it's Christmas, and I don't know why I like love Vampire Christmas so much. Like I'm really vibing with it. But Louis, he mentions, hey, how about we go to Greece, you know, the Mediterranean, sunbathers and stuff. Like let's go like somewhere exotic, because Lestat has always wanted to go somewhere exotic with him. And here's like a big book Easter egg in this scene that I feel like people who haven't read the books don't know, but Lestat just kind of casually mentions those who must be kept. And this is like a big deal for a lot of reasons. So short book spoilers here for those who must be kept. This refers to Enkil and Akasha, who are the king and queen of the damned. They're ancient, like Egyptian royalty, and they are the first vampires. And at this time, Enkil and Akasha, they had kind of like aged and turned into like kind of living statues, you know, they're statues basically that move sometimes. And the vampire Marius was their caretaker for thousands of years, and at this period of time he was keeping them in an estate on a small island off the coast of Greece. And Lestat knows that they're in Greece because right before he came to America, he met those who must be kept because he was living with Marius at the time. And also this is like a big deal for a lot of like Lestat's side of the story that we will probably get to eventually. Ultimately, Lestat turns down moving to Greece because, you know, it's in Europe and it's World War II. Europe is very unsafe overall. He recommends Buenos Aires in Argentina instead because, hey, World War II isn't in Argentina. This is a great idea. Lestat has made his decision, not asking for anyone else's opinion. They're gonna go to South America. And Claudia's still working on her plan at the same time. She's trying to make Lestat complacent, so she even tries to be nice to him a little bit and lull him into thinking that, you know, that he is won. She's coming around to him. They're playing like piano and stuff. And now that Lestat feels complacent, it's time to start sowing the seeds of part 2 of the Kill Lestat plan, which is to start planting ideas. Like Claudia knows how Lestat works enough to realize that this needs to be Lestat's idea or he's not going to go along with it. So she just starts placing ideas, like just throwing it out there. Like maybe it's a thing, you know, just getting real casual about him. But she tells him like, we're badass vampires. Why are we running away scared? Like, shouldn't we leave on our own terms? Wouldn't that be way cooler? How about we go out with a bang? Like our last night in town, we throw a big party and we just like kill everybody. Like that's what badass vampires would do, right, Lestat? And obviously Lestat says no. He's like, it's not safe to do that. But Claudia's smart enough to be like, oh yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. And then Louis's acting his part of the voice of reason, but that's really gonna entice Lestat to want to throw the party more and more. If Louis's like kind of being a stick in the mud, then he's like, oh, well then we have to have the party. So they're like both working in a way that fits to Lestat's like own psychology. Eventually Lestat's on board with this party. They decide, hey, guess what? Mardi Gras is early this year. It's on February 6th, 1940. It's early. Why don't we just get all our affairs in order and throw a big ass Mardi Gras party and then get out of town on the last boat? Like, this is a great idea. And finally, Lestat's like, this is a great idea. I'm glad I thought of it. One of those. So step 1 and 2 of Claudia's Kill Lestat plan are now complete. It's on to phase 3, which is party planning. So all of them go to Tom, who's like, you know, he was like the old councilman friend of Louis. And they're basically trying to bribe him to do what they want because Lestat, he's like, if I'm gonna throw the Mardi Gras party, I'm gonna be the king of Mardi Gras. And like, this is elected long in advance. There's a lot of like, I'm not gonna get into the whole like Mardi Gras system in this video, but it's like, that doesn't happen. But they're like, hey, Tom, you know, I heard one of your boats sank. You know, it'd be sure great if Lestat was king of Mardi Gras and you got a new boat, right? They're just bribing him. So he's like, fine, I want a boat. Fine, I'll fix it for you. So all of the bribes come in to all of these like people for the Mardi Gras like committee, and Lestat is elected king of Mardi Gras. Now that that's all settled, it's time to start planning the most opulent party New Orleans has ever seen. So they start getting that underway, all of the planning, and Lestat, he's making their travel arrangements, and Louis is acting besotted with him. Everything's kind of going according to both of their plans. Right here we take a break and we come back to the present. We're back with Daniel. And we're getting like a little hint about the slaughter to come because he has like literal old newspaper clippings from the era talking about like the party massacre, along with like dossiers on the victims and stuff. We're just waiting for carnage at this point, and I'm like, oh man. Like, I'm so nervous. And also, the end of last episode, which I lost my shit about, we found out Rashid was there in the 70s when Daniel met Louis for the first time. What is going on here? I was just flabbergasted, and so is Daniel a little bit, because now he's really suspicious of Rashid, and he kind of just side-eyes him a lot, like, what's this guy about? He's literally standing in the sunlight and is fine. So the show is just basically edging the whole audience with the Rashid mystery at this point. Like, what is happening? Everyone's just at the edge of our seats wanting to know what happens. So in that little tease, we're gonna go back to 1940, and the party planning is continuing. They all decide they're gonna fast for like 3 days before the party, so when they get there and then the slaughter starts happening, ooh boy, it's gonna be super satisfying because they're gonna be hangry. So like, they're really getting into this like vampire massacre party. The whole idea here is that at the party, they're going to pick their select few and give them like this little like flower corsage. And then once, you know, the party's over, it is time for the after party. All the people who got a corsage get to come back to their house for like the real party. So yeah, it's going to be insane. But anyway, Claudia's moving on to phase 4 of her plan, which is to trick Lestat into drinking poison. And then after he has been poisoned, it will be easier to kill him. That's the idea here. So she goes, picks up this like paralytic agent from the pharmacist, and she's gonna like slip it into a human's drink so they get poisoned, and then Lestat will eat the human, which is completely book accurate. She does actually poison a human and has Lestat drink him in the books as well. So now it is finally time. It's Mardi Gras, and Lestat is living his dandy fantasy. He loves all the attention he's getting, and now he is the fanciest king of Mardi Gras that ever was. And of course, Lestat just can't leave it at that. He has to take it too far. So he pretends to eat a really realistic looking baby whilst on the float. Like, and it scares off a lot of people from coming to their party for good reason. Obviously, eating babies is not a good look for anybody, but it doesn't stop everybody from wanting to come to their fancy party. So it's party time. Louis, Claudia, Lestat, they all are going around the party looking for their perfect victims or giving out their little corsages. And I have to point this out because Claudia introduces Lestat to the twins, and like I was freaking out just as like a fan. So Easter eggs here. It's kind of more an homage to the 1994 movie than the book. Like in the movie, Claudia, she drugs these 2 twin boys. And in the book, it's more like just 2 orphans she got. They weren't necessarily twins. I mean, the show obviously aged up these twins quite a bit because, you know, in the book and in the 94 movie, they're children. So now they're adult twins, but like, Lestat thinks they're pretty, so she picked like a good set of twins. So the twins get corsages. Louis, he runs into Tom at the party, and Tom's a little drunk, and he's running his mouth saying hateful kind of stuff about Louis and Lestat, and Louis's like, you should get a corsage. So he makes sure Tom gets that corsage. Like, Louis does not put up with the fuckery of others. We have learned this in several episodes. So the night goes on, and Louis and Lestat decide they're gonna end this party with a bang. So they're gonna share one last romantic dance, and they even like kiss each other right in the middle of the dance floor in front of everybody. And on an emotional note, it's actually quite a romantic scene, and Louis knows he's only supposed to be, you know, distracting Lestat, pretending he's in love with him, but it also makes him remember that he really was in love with Lestat for many years. Like, Lestat was the first man that Louis ever loved, and Lestat was also the first person who made Louis feel like being gay wasn't something to be ashamed of. It wasn't like this dirty secret. It was just who he was, and it was beautiful, and it was okay. So it makes Louis just feel really conflicted, and which will come into play later on with, the plan to kill Lestat. So it's like, it's really romantic, and it's really kind of tragic in a way. It's just a beautiful scene, really. Also, it's 1940, and this is two men kissing each other, which is quite shocking for the era. So there's a lot of people just leaving the party like that. But frankly, we don't want to fuck with homophobes either, so bye. So anyway, the party kind of ends there. It's time for the after party, so they bring back all of the Corsage people to their house, and they're spinning this big yarn about how they drank this magical elixir of youth. And the guests are all like, they're like a little drunk, so they're buying it. They're like, ooh, really? Okay. As soon as they think they're gonna get this elixir, the massacre begins. And I don't even think I could show any of it because yikes the gore. Oh my word. AMC also airs The Walking Dead. So they know gore. There's a lot of gore in this massacre. Holy potatoes. So obviously the guests are trying to flee, but they can't because all the doors are locked. They're trapped. And it's just a full-on vampire rampage massacre. They're just chasing these people down, devouring them, killing them, maiming them in horrible ways. It's a lot. And finally, they're down to the last victim. It's the twin that Claudia told Louis that she poisoned. She told Louis she poisoned one of the twins. She's gonna get Lestat to drink him because Lestat liked these twins. So Lestat comes upstairs and he seems a little suspicious of them. And then we see the front door open. What is going on here? Oh my word. And Lestat knows the trick that they've been up to, because guess what? He turned Antoinette, and he's been using her as a spy. She's been listening on their telepathic communications, so she's told Lestat the whole scheme. Oh my word. But wait, there's more. There's more twists to come. Claudia was too smart for that. Just when you think they've lost, Lestat starts getting really violently sick. And Claudia stabs Antoinette with a fire poker and stuff. And Claudia's just like, guess what, bitch? I've been on to Antoinette 4 weeks. I knew she was listening. I was feeding her the information I wanted her to know. Oh my word! Claudia knew! She knew! She's so many steps ahead of the game. She was keeping information from Louis and keeping information from Antoinette and feeding Antoinette what she wanted her to know so Lestat would know, so her real plan wouldn't be revealed, because she didn't poison one of the twins. She poisoned Tom because she knew Lestat was a petty little bitch and he was gonna eat Tom because Tom runs his mouth. So, oh boy, and Tom was the first person Lestat ate. Oh my goodness. So Claudia's work here is done, and it's time for Louis to be the one to hand out the final blow to Lestat. So Louis ends up slitting Lestat's throat, and he kind of just holds him while it's happening because, he's very conflicted about this. And then Claudia comes back after it's done, and she's like, I'm gonna be real goth right now and dip my pen in his neck wound and write journal entries in his blood. Wow. Serial killer chic, am I right? So book comparison here. Louis much more passive in the whole ordeal in the books because it's really Claudia who deals out all the death. She poisoned the twin, and Lestat ate the twin, and then she slit his throat. And it's also really a private affair. It's just late one night, she just brought some twins home as a gift. And there's no party or anything. It's just much more low-key in the book. There's no vampire massacre. But yeah, it's all done. It's all done now. The massacre is complete. The killing of Lestat's complete. Claudia and Louis, they start cleaning up all the bodies. They burn Antoinette alive in the incinerator. Oh my word. You know what? Honestly, I feel a little bad for Antoinette. Hear me out. I get it. She's still the homewrecker of this situation, but she is also a victim of Lestat because he has used her egregiously. She stayed and did all this stuff for him because she loved him. He wanted to use her. So, I feel a little bit bad for Antoinette, but she's not perfect here, so I don't know. She's she's an interesting figure and completely just invented for the show. Antoinette is not in the books at all. So they've burned all the bodies, and the last one left is Lestat. But Louis couldn't bring himself to burn him. He just couldn't do it. So instead, they stuck his body in a trunk and they left it out for the garbage man to pick up the next day. They get in a car and they drive off to the port because they're gonna get on a boat that's heading to Europe, whose only cargo was a bunch of coffins. So it's like, plan well completed, right? And there's some big differences here with the book version of events, because in the book, they wrap up Lestat's body in like a rug and they dump it in a swamp where there's a bunch of alligators. So they think like the gators will just eat Lestat. However, back in the present now, Daniel is giving Louis a lot of shit again, because what they did to Lestat, by Louis's own definition, isn't something that kills vampires. So Daniel figures out that Louis didn't kill Lestat on purpose. He gave Lestat mercy by not burning his body. Like all he did was just really hurt Lestat bad. And more pages are ripped out of Claudia's journal at this point, and some of the entries like suggest that Louis and Claudia's relationship just was not great at all at this point, which is actually very book accurate as well, because Louis and Claudia, they loved each other, but there was always part of Claudia that hated Louis for being a part of making her into a vampire. The relationship was quite complicated. Also, we're pointing out that Louis is editorializing his story quite a bit. He's not the most reliable of narrators, and Daniel can see this. He's like, you're full of shit. This didn't happen. Like, the way you're telling the story is obviously bullshit. And like, if you've read Vampire Lestat, you do know Louis exaggerates and like editorializes quite a bit in his storytelling abilities. Also, Daniel like surmises that like when the trash gets picked up, they don't just like throw it out in the wilderness. They take it to the dump where there's like tons of big ass juicy rats to eat. Perfect for a vampire on the mend. Like, obviously, Louis didn't kill him. He like set him free with opportunity to heal and come back. Lestat is not dead. Daniel figured it out like right away. And now it is time for the bombshell of the season. I am deceased. Okay, so Rashid is also there. He's there to keep Louis calm. We've seen Rashid stop Louis from attacking Daniel in the past in the show. So like, yeah, Rashid's there. But like, what is Rashid, right? And Daniel's super suspicious of him, so he starts like saying, oh yeah, and you Rashid, what the fuck is up with you? Like, I've seen you in the sun, but like, what's happening here? You're not a human. Like, I've seen Louis like drink a lot of your blood and you're fine. You're like $130, homie. You're not a big guy and he drank a lot of your blood. You should have been passed out. Like, there is something off with you. What is going on here? Daniel's just basically getting belligerent, and it's the perfect excuse of like, run your mouth, see what happens. And boy, does he learn how fucked he is. So Daniel's going off on his rant and Rashid's in the background, and he starts like taking out contact lenses. I'm like, okay. And then he starts floating and I'm like, what? And he just floats over to this bookshelf and he pulls out a book and he gives it to Daniel, and Daniel opens it and it's all these flyers from the Theatre des Vampires, and I was freaking out at this point. The Theatre des Vampires from the book, oh my gosh, Lestat founded it back in the day, and he left a vampire named Armand in charge of it. And in the end, this is also where Claudia meets her demise in the books. And Louis and Armand, after that, became companions for several decades. So at this point, I have lost my ever-loving shit because Louis introduces Daniel to the vampire Armand, and he tells him that this is the love of his life, and I did not see this coming. I didn't. I should have. You know, Armand in the books and in the show, he's over 500 years old. He's an old-ass vampire. He was made in like 1599. He's an old-ass vampire. So the sun wouldn't affect him the same way it does Louis. Like, he can be out in the sun for a bit and it doesn't burn him. And I just wasn't putting it together because book accurate Armand is a 16-year-old Ukrainian kid. Like, he's like a small Ukrainian boy with very like blonde angelic hair. So like, I just wasn't putting it together till now. But like, oh boy. And then like everything started to make so much more sense. Like, they laid so many breadcrumbs through the season that I just didn't pick up on, and I wish I did. Like Armand in the books, Rashid is also super religious. Like, Armand is very religious, and he's also, you know, Ukrainian, so he's from like Eastern Europe. And at one point, like back a few episodes ago, you know, Rashid was praying, and Daniel, and he says something to Daniel, and Daniel's like, oh, is that Kazakh, like from Kazakhstan, which is, you know, right near Ukraine, so it makes a lot of sense. There's so many breadcrumbs. I miss them. I'm shocked. I'm deceased. I'm flabbergasted. I don't know. I lost my shit. Oh my gosh, what a freaking finale, am I right? Completely stuck the landing, and just like, it was like the perfect moment to stop the action before leading into season 2. It was like perfect. They just nailed the landing. I'm just flabbergasted how good it was. Like, this was a great freaking finale. I can't wait for season 2. I think I'm gonna do a video just of all predictions I'm having for season 2. I'm just so excited. This was so good. Let me know in the comments down below, what did you think of the finale? Were you stunned by the Rashid / Armand reveal? Like, I am deceased. I can't even with it. I am just so stunned and like so happy. Let me know in the comments down below all of your thoughts. I want to know. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe, and if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. The links for that are in the description down below, and on that note, I will see you guys soon. Bye!